Part 1. The Shadow over New Albion. Imagine a city where the air hums with the song of steam, where every heartbeat is matched by the relentless tick of clockwork gears. Welcome to New Albion, a sprawling marvel of brass and iron, carved out of the wild, untamed West in an age when machines became the new gods. Smokestacks pierce the sky like jagged teeth, spilling plumes of white vapor that drift over streets alive with the clatter of hooves and the hiss of pistons. This is a place where dreams are forged in fire and steel, where the future gleams bright until it doesn't. At the heart of it all stands the Grimshaw estate, a fortress of industry and ambition. Its towering walls gleam with polished pipes and intricate gearwork, a monument to a family that tamed this land and bent it to their will. But beneath the shine, a darkness festers, a curse, older than the city itself, coils around the Grimshaw name like a serpent, strangling hope with every passing generation. No male heir has ever lived past childhood. Each son born to the family withers before his 10th year, leaving behind grieving parents and a legacy teetering on the edge of ruin. Tonight, the weight of that curse presses heavier than ever. Inside the estate's grand study, Lord Archibald Grimshaw slumps in his leather armchair, the firelight flickering across his lined face. His hands tremble as they clutch a small, faded portrait of his son, Edwin, who drew his last breath just days ago. The boy's bright eyes stare back from the canvas, frozen in a moment of joy that now feels like a cruel taunt. The room is still, save for the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, a sound that haunts Archibald, counting down the moments until his empire falls. Another one gone, he whispers, his voice cracking like dry timber. How many more must we bury before this ends? The oak door creaks open, and a figure steps into the dim light. Victoria Grimshaw, his only daughter, carries herself with a quiet strength that belies her 23 years. Her auburn hair catches the glow of the hearth, framing a face smudged with oil and soot from her hours in the workshop. She's no delicate flower of high society. Her leather apron and calloused hands mark her as an engineer, a creator, a woman who thrives amid the clang of metal and the rush of steam. To her, the world is a puzzle to be solved, and she's never been one to back down from a challenge. "Father," she says softly, resting a hand on his shoulder, "you shouldn't sit here alone." Archibald lifts his gaze, his eyes red but still burning with the fire of a man who built something from nothing. "Victoria, my girl, I've failed you, failed us all, without an heir." This he gestures weakly to the room, the estate, the city beyond. It's all dust, the factories, the machines, the future of New Albion. It dies with me. She kneels beside him, her voice steady as steel. "It's not over yet. I'm still here, Father, and I won't let our name fade into the shadows." He manages a faint, bitter smile. "You're brilliant, Victoria, sharper than I ever was." But out there he nods toward the window, where the city glitters under a haze of steam. They won't follow a woman. Not the workers, not the merchants, not the council. Tradition's a chain we can't break. "Then I'll snap it," she says, her chin lifting with defiance. "Or I'll find the root of this curse and rip it out myself." For a moment, hope flickers in Archibald's eyes, fragile but real. "If anyone can, it's you. But it's a dangerous path, my dear. This curse, it's taken more than our boys. It's stolen our peace, our laughter. Don't let it claim you. 2. Victoria rises, her mind already churning. For years, she's combed through the family's ancient records, yellowed blueprints, dusty ledgers, scraps of history tucked away in the estate's sprawling library. Just last week, she'd found something, a torn page from a journal, its ink faded but legible, buried beneath a pile of forgotten schematics. It spoke of the Ironheart family, once partners to the Grimshaws, now their bitterest rivals, a feud over a relic of unimaginable power, a vow of revenge sealed in blood. Could this be the curse's origin? And if it was, could it be undone? She doesn't linger on goodbyes. With a final glance at her father, she strides from the study, her boots echoing on the polished floor. Down the winding stairs, past the servants who bow their heads in quiet respect, she heads for the one place where she feels truly alive, her workshop. The cavernous room smells of oil and molten metal, its walls lined with tools and half-finished inventions. In the corner stands her masterpiece Gearheart, a towering automaton of brass and steel, his glowing blue eyes a beacon in the gloom. He's more than a machine. He's her companion, her protector, her friend. Gearheart, she calls, her voice ringing through the space. Wake up. We've got work to do. The automaton stirs, gears grinding as his frame whirs to life. Mistress Victoria, he rumbles, his voice deep and resonant. How may I serve? She straps on her steam-powered gauntlets, the leather creaking as she flexes her fingers. We're going hunting, she says, a spark of determination in her eyes, for answers, for truth, for a way to break this curse. Gearheart tilts his head, a gesture almost human in its curiosity. And if the truth is dangerous, then we face it together, she replies, stepping toward the workshop's heavy doors. She throws them open, and the night spills in cool air laced with the tang of coal smoke. The distant hum of New Albion's machinery calling her forward. The city stretches out before her, a maze of steel spires and shadowed alleys, where secrets hide in every corner. Victoria takes a deep breath, the weight of her family's future settling on her shoulders. She's not just a daughter, not just an engineer, she's a fighter, forged in the fires of loss and tempered by her own unyielding will. With Gearhart's steady steps beside her, she plunges into the unknown, chasing a whisper of hope through a world of steam and shadow. The curse has ruled the Grimshaws for too long. Now, it's her turn to rule it. Part 2. The pulse of the Clockwork City. The streets of New Albion thrummed with life as Victoria stepped out into the night, Gearhart's heavy footsteps echoing beside her like a heartbeat of iron. The city was a beast of its own, making a labyrinth of cobblestone paths and towering smokestacks, where lamplights cast long, flickering shadows that danced to the rhythm of hissing steam. Airships drifted overhead, their engines humming a low, mournful tune, while vendors hawked their wares in the bustling market square, brass pocket watches, steam-powered lanterns, and tiny automatons that chirped like mechanical birds. This was no ordinary western town, with its dust and spurs. New Albion was a marvel of invention, a place where the future was hammered into being with every turn of a gear. Victoria pulled her leather coat tighter, the chill of the evening biting at her skin. Her mind was still alight with the torn journal page she'd found, its cryptic words looping through her thoughts, the Ironheart vow, sealed in the heart of the relic. binds the Grimshaw blood. She didn't know what the relic was or where it lay, but the name Ironheart was a spark to kindling. The rival family's estate loomed on the far side of the city, a fortress of cold steel and sharper ambition. If answers existed, they were there or in the shadows between. "Keep up, Gearheart," she murmured, weaving through a crowd of workers in oil-stained overalls, their faces weary but proud. The automaton's blue eyes glowed faintly, scanning the faces around them. "We're heading to the Cogmarket. If there's talk of the Ironhearts or this relic, it'll be there. Caution, mistress." Gearheart rumbled, his voice a low vibration that cut through the din. "The Cogmarket is a place of whispers and knives. Not all who trade there seek only coin." She flashed him a grin, her confidence a shield against the unknown. "Good. Whispers are exactly what we need." The Cogmarket was New Albion's beating heart, a sprawling maze of stalls and workshops tucked beneath a canopy of iron girders and steam pipes. The air was thick with the scent of molten metal and coal dust, and the clamour of hammers on anvils rang like a battle hymn. Victoria navigated the narrow aisles, her eyes darting from one stall to the next. A tinkerer soldering a mechanical arm, a merchant hawking vials of glowing ether, a child darting through the crowd with a tray of freshly printed broadsheets. Everywhere she looked, the city pulsed with invention. But beneath it all, she sensed something darker, a tension, a secret waiting to be pried loose. At a corner stall draped in crimson cloth, an old woman sat hunched over a table littered with gears and springs. Her fingers, gnarled as tree roots, moved with surprising deftness, assembling a tiny clockwork sparrow. Victoria paused, drawn by the woman's sharp, knowing eyes. "You're a long way from the Grimshaw estate." "Girl," the woman said without looking up, her voice like gravel underfoot. "What brings you to the Cogmarket's shadows?" Victoria's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. "Just browsing. Got anything unusual for sale?" "Something with a story." The woman's lips curled into a sly smile. "Everything here has a story, but not all are safe to tell. You're chasing the old feud. Aren't you Grimshaw and Ironheart?" "Bad blood runs deep." Victoria leaned closer, her voice low. "What do you know about it?" The woman set down her tools, her gaze piercing. "I know the Ironhearts don't forgive, and they don't forget. Word is, they've got something hidden in that fortress of theirs, something that hums with power no machine can match. But you won't hear more from me. Ask for the Clockmaker. He knows things even the shadows keep quiet." "The Clockmaker," Victoria pressed, but the woman waved her off, returning to her sparrow as if Victoria had ceased to exist. Frustrated but intrigued, she stepped back into the crowd, Gearheart looming protectively at her side. The Clockmaker, whoever he was, sounded like a lead worth following. But the Cogmarket wasn't a place to linger without a plan. Eyes followed her, some curious, others wary, and she felt the weight of being a Grimshaw in a city divided by loyalties. As they turned down a quieter alley, the air grew thick with the scent of oil and rust. A faint ticking echoed from the darkness, growing louder with each step. Victoria's hand drifted to the steam-powered gauntlet on her wrist, its pistons primed for action. Gearheart's frame tensed, his sensors whirring softly. "Danger approaches," he warned. Before she could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man, tall and lean, his face half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His coat was lined with intricate clockwork patterns, and a monocle gleamed over one eye, catching the light of a nearby gas lamp. "Victoria Grimshaw," he said, his voice smooth as polished brass. "You're a long way from your workshop." She squared her shoulders, refusing to flinch. "And you know my name. Care to share yours?" He tipped his hat, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "They call me the Clockmaker, and I hear you're looking for answers about a certain curse." Her heart skipped. This was no coincidence. "What do you know about it, and why should I trust you?" The Clockmaker stepped closer, his monocle glinting like a star. "Because I've got no love for the Ironhearts, and you've got no time to waste. That curse of yours, it's no fairy tale. It's tied to a relic they've guarded for centuries, a device that bends time itself. But getting to it won't be easy. The Ironhearts have eyes everywhere, and their mechanical sentries don't take kindly to intruders." Victoria studied him, her instincts torn between suspicion and curiosity. His knowledge was too precise, his timing too perfect. Yet something in his voice, bitter, almost personal, hinted at a grudge that ran as deep as her own. "Why help me?" she asked. "Let's just say the Ironhearts took something from me, too," he said, his tone darkening. "Help me get into their estate, and I'll guide you to the relic. Deal." She hesitated, weighing the risks. The Cogmarket buzzed around them, oblivious to the pact forming in its shadows. Gearhart's eyes flickered, a silent warning, but Victoria's resolve was ironclad. She extended her hand. "Deal. But if you cross me, you'll answer to more than just me." The Clockmaker's smirk widened as he shook her hand, his grip firm and cool. "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it. Now, come. The night's young, and New Albion's secrets don't wait." Together, they slipped deeper into the alley, the ticking sound fading into the city's endless hum. Victoria's heart raced, not with fear, but with the thrill of the chase. The curse was no longer just a shadow over her family, it was a puzzle, a challenge, a fight she was born to win. With Gearhart's strength and the Clockmaker's cunning, she was one step closer to unraveling the truth. But in New Albion, truth was a dangerous prize, and the path to it was lined with gears and blades. Part 3. The ticking heart of betrayal. The alley swallowed Victoria, Gearheart, and the Clockmaker, its narrow walls closing in like the jaws of some great mechanical beast. The distant hum of New Albion's Cogmarket faded, replaced by the eerie ticking that seemed to pulse from the very stones beneath their feet. Victoria's steam-powered gauntlets glowed faintly, their pistons primed, as she followed the Clockmaker's swift steps through the labyrinth of shadows. Gearhart's massive frame loomed behind her, his blue eyes scanning the darkness for threats. The air was thick with the scent of rust and coal, and every creak of a pipe overhead set her nerves alight. The Clockmaker's promise of answers tugged her forward, but doubt gnawed at her. His smooth words and shadowed past felt like gears that didn't quite mesh. "Stay close," the Clockmaker murmured, his monocle glinting as he glanced back. "The Ironheart's reach extends even here. Their sentries patrol the underbelly of the city, and they don't ask questions." Victoria nodded, her jaw tight. "You said the relic bends time. What does that mean? And how do you know so much about it?" He chuckled, a sound as sharp as a blade. "Patience, Miss Grimshaw. All will be clear when we reach the Hollow, a place where secrets collect like dust." For now, keep your eyes open and your wits sharper. The alley opened into a cavernous chamber, a forgotten undercroft beneath New Albion's gleaming surface. The hollow was a graveyard of machinery, its floor littered with broken gears and shattered pistons, illuminated by flickering gas lamps that cast jagged shadows. Rusted pipes snaked along the walls, dripping with condensation, and the air thrummed with a low, ominous pulse, like the heartbeat of the city itself. Victoria's breath caught as she spotted a massive clockwork structure at the chamber's center, a towering contraption of spinning gears and glowing dials, its hands frozen at midnight. "The Chrono Vault," the Clockmaker said, his voice reverent, "a relic of New Albion's founding, built by the first Grimshaws and Ironhearts together. It's said to guard the heart of the city's power and the source of your curse." Victoria stepped closer, her engineer's mind racing. The vault's intricate design was unlike anything she'd seen, its gears etched with runes that pulsed with faint, unnatural light. "This is connected to the Ironheart's relic?" she asked, her fingers itching to trace the patterns. "More than connected," the Clockmaker replied, circling the structure. "The relic is its core, a device they called the Temporal Aegis. It was meant to stabilize the city's machines, to keep time itself in check. But the Ironhearts twisted it, turned it into a weapon to ruin your family." Before she could press further, Gearhart's frame stiffened, his sensors whirring. Hostiles detected. He rumbled, his voice cutting through the silence, approaching from the western tunnel. Victoria spun, her gauntlets humming as she raised them. The ticking grew louder, sharper, until it was drowned out by the clank of metal on stone. From the tunnel's mouth emerged 3 mechanical sentries, hulking constructs of steel and steam, their eyes glowing red as they locked onto the trio. Each was a monstrosity of whirring blades and piston-driven limbs, built for one purpose: to destroy. "Run or fight?" the Clockmaker asked, pulling a sleek, clockwork pistol from his coat. "Fight," Victoria said, her voice steel. She'd built Gearheart to withstand worse than this, and she wasn't about to let a few tin soldiers stop her. "Gearheart, take the left one. I'll handle the right." The automaton surged forward, his massive fists slamming into the first sentry with a force that shook the chamber. Sparks flew as metal met metal, gears grinding in protest. Victoria activated her gauntlets, steam hissing as she launched a blast of compressed air at the second sentry, knocking it back. The third lunged for the Clockmaker, but he danced aside with uncanny grace, his pistol firing a dart that lodged in the machine's core, sending it into a frenzy of sparks. The battle was chaos, a symphony of clashing steel and roaring steam. Victoria ducked a swinging blade, her heart pounding as she recalibrated her gauntlets for a stronger blast. Gearheart tore through his opponent, ripping an arm free and hurling it into the shadows. The Clockmaker's movements were a blur, his weapon firing with surgical precision. But the sentries were relentless, their red eyes unyielding, and for every blow they landed, Victoria felt the weight of the curse pressing closer. "Behind you," the Clockmaker shouted, and she spun just in time to see a 4th sentry emerge from a hidden panel in the wall. Its claw snapped toward her, but Gearheart intercepted, taking the blow with a groan of straining metal. Victoria's blood ran cold. Gearheart was her creation, her friend. and the thought of losing him was unbearable. "Hold on," she cried, diving for a fallen gear and hurling it at the sentry's head. The impact staggered it, giving her time to adjust her gauntlets. With a roar, she unleashed a torrent of superheated steam, melting the machine's joints until it collapsed in a heap of molten slag. Panting, she turned to the clockmaker, who was wiping his pistol with a handkerchief. Calm as if he'd just finished a card game. "Not bad," he said, smirking. "But we're not done yet." As the last sentry fell, the chrono vault shuddered, its gears grinding to life. The frozen hands twitched, then began to spin backward, the runes flaring brighter. Victoria's stomach twisted as the air grew heavy, time itself seeming to warp around them. "What's happening?" she demanded. The clockmaker's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of grim realization. "The vault's reacting to us, or to you. The curse, it's tied to your blood. Victoria, you being here is waking it up." Before she could process his words, a voice echoed from the shadows, cold, sharp, and achingly familiar. "You shouldn't have come." Grimshaw. From the tunnel stepped a woman, her silver hair pinned beneath a crown of gears, her eyes burning with a mix of rage and sorrow. Lady Eleanor Ironheart, matriarch of the rival clan, stood flanked by two more sentries, their blades gleaming. "You think you can undo what was set in motion centuries ago," she said, her voice cutting like a blade. "Your family's greed brought this curse upon you, and now you've brought it to my door." Victoria's heart raced, but not with fear, with fury. "Greed, you're the ones who turned a partnership into a vendetta. Tell me about the temporal aegis. Tell me how to stop this." Eleanor's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Stop it. You don't even know what you're fighting for. The aegis isn't just a relic, it's the soul of New Albion, and it will never let your family rise again." The clockmaker stepped forward, his pistol raised. "Enough. Eleanor, tell her the truth, or I will." Victoria's head snapped toward him, shock coursing through her. "You know her." What truth? His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of guilt. "I wasn't entirely honest. Victoria, I'm not just a wanderer with a grudge. I'm Elias Hayes, once an Ironheart, now their enemy. And the curse. It's not just their doing. Your family had a hand in it too." The revelation hit like a hammer, the vaults ticking now, a deafening roar in her ears. Her family, complicit in their own downfall. The truth was a blade, cutting deeper than any sentry's claw. But as Eleanor raised her hand, signaling her machines to advance, Victoria knew one thing for certain: answers would come, but only if she survived this night. Part 4. Tangled Gears and Hidden Truths. The chrono vault's relentless ticking filled the hollow, a thunderous pulse that seemed to mock Victoria's racing heart. Lady Eleanor Ironheart stood before her, a vision of cold authority, her silver hair glinting like polished steel under the gas lamps. The two mechanical sentries at her side whirred ominously, their blades twitching as if eager to strike. But it was the clockmaker Elias Hayes, an Ironheart by blood whose betrayal cut deepest. His revelation hung in the air like smoke. The Grimshaws, her own family, had a hand in the curse that had stolen her brother and countless others. Victoria's hands clenched, her steam-powered gauntlets hissing faintly as she fought to keep her composure. "You lied to me," she said, her voice low but sharp, aimed at Elias. "You said you were an enemy of the Ironhearts, but you're one of them. Why should I believe a word you say now?" Elias lowered his pistol, his expression caught between defiance and regret. I didn't lie. Victoria, I am their enemy. I walked away from that family years ago when I saw what they'd become. But the truth about the curse, it's messier than I let on. Your family isn't blameless, and neither is mine. Enough, Eleanor snapped, her voice slicing through the tension. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on Victoria. You think you can waltz into my city, dig up old wounds, and demand answers? The temporal aegis is ours by right. Your ancestors tried to steal it, to hoard its power for themselves. The curse was their punishment and yours. Victoria's mind reeled, but she refused to back down. Punishment for what? Building New Albion, making it thrive. If my family wronged yours, tell me how. Give me the truth, not riddles. Eleanor's lips tightened, but before she could respond, a loud clank echoed from Gearhart's frame. The automaton, still battered from the earlier fight, had shifted to stand between Victoria and the sentries, his blue eyes glowing fiercely. Mistress, I detect instability in the vault's core. The temporal aegis is active. We must act swiftly. Oh, wonderful, Elias muttered, rubbing his temple. Nothing says family reunion like a time-bending relic about to blow us all to bits. Victoria shot him a glare, but the faintest smile tugged at her lips despite herself. His flippant tone was infuriating, yet oddly grounding in the chaos. Focus. Elias, if you're really on my side, prove it. Help me get to the Aegis before it does. Whatever it's about to do. Eleanor's laughter was cold, like the chime of a broken bell. You think you can simply walk up to the Aegis? It's guarded by more than machines. Girl. And you, she turned to Elias, her gaze venomous. You're a traitor to your blood. You'll pay for siding with a Grimshaw. The sentries lunged, their blades slicing through the air with mechanical precision. Victoria dodged, her gauntlets roaring as she unleashed a blast of steam that sent one sentry staggering. Gearheart tackled the other, his massive frame absorbing blows that would have crushed a man. Elias, with his infuriating grace, darted around the fray, firing darts that sparked against the sentry's armor. But the vault's ticking grew erratic, the runes along its gears pulsing wildly. And Victoria felt a strange pull, like time itself was unraveling around her. We need to shut it down, she shouted, diving toward the vault. Her fingers traced the runes, searching for a mechanism, a switch, anything. But the surface was scalding, and she yanked her hand back with a yelp. Gearheart, scan it. Find an access point. The automaton's sensors whirred, but before he could respond, a hidden panel in the vault slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. The ticking intensified, a deafening roar now, and a faint glow emanated from below. The Aegis is there, Elias called, dodging a sentry's claw. But we've got to move now. Victoria hesitated, glancing at Eleanor, who stood frozen, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, anger, fear, and something softer, almost like regret. Why do you hate us so much? Victoria demanded, her voice raw. What did my family do to you? For a moment, Eleanor's composure cracked, and her eyes softened. Your grandfather. He and my father were partners, bound by trust, until he betrayed us, claiming the Aegis for himself. It cost me everything, my family, my future. The curse was our vengeance, but it's consumed us all. The words hit Victoria like a punch, but there was no time to process them. The vault shuddered, gears grinding as if the chamber itself were collapsing. "Come with us," she said, the offer spilling out before she could stop it. "Help us fix this. End the feud." Eleanor's eyes widened, but she shook her head. "You're a fool, Grimshaw, but a brave one." She raised a hand, and the sentries froze, their blades hovering inches from Gearheart. "Go, find the Aegis, but know this: its power isn't meant for mortals to wield." Victoria didn't wait for more. She plunged down the staircase, Gearheart and Elias close behind. The air grew colder, the glow brighter, until they emerged into a chamber that took her breath away. At its center, suspended in a web of brass and crystal, was the temporal Aegis, a sphere of shimmering energy, its surface rippling like liquid starlight. It pulsed in time with the vaults ticking, each beat sending ripples through the air that made Victoria's skin prickle. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Elias said, his voice hushed. He stood closer than she'd expected, his shoulder brushing hers, and she stepped away, flustered by the sudden warmth of his presence. "Focus," she snapped, but her cheeks burned. "How do we shut it down?" Gearhart's sensors whirred, analyzing the sphere. "The Aegis is unstable. Mistress, it requires a key, a specific frequency to deactivate. Without it, the temporal field will collapse, potentially erasing this chamber from existence." "Erase?" Elias groaned. "Why does every ancient relic come with the side of apocalyptic doom? Couldn't they just make a nice, safe music box?" Victoria ignored his quip, her mind racing. "A frequency, like a clockwork signal. My gauntlets, they can emit pulses. If I calibrate them right, maybe I can match it." As she worked, adjusting dials with practiced precision, Elias kept watch, his pistol ready. The awkwardness of their alliance hung between them, a tangle of mistrust and necessity. "You know," he said, breaking the silence, "for someone who builds killer robots, you're not half bad at this hero business." She snorted, keeping her eyes on her work. "And for a lying ex-Ironheart, you're not half bad at dodging bullets. Let's keep it that way." A spark of connection flared, fleeting but real, before the Aegis pulsed violently, shaking the chamber. Victoria's gauntlets hummed, emitting a low frequency that clashed with the relic's rhythm. The ticking slowed, then surged, and she gritted her teeth, pushing her invention to its limits. "Come on," she whispered. "Work with me." The sphere dimmed, its glow stabilizing, but only for a moment. A crack split the air, and the chamber trembled as if reality itself were fracturing. Elias grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Victoria, we need to go. Now." But she couldn't tear her eyes from the Aegis. The truth was here, in this glowing heart of time and vengeance. Her family's past, her future, the curse, it all converged in this moment. And as the chamber shook, she knew one thing: she wasn't leaving without answers, even if it meant facing the abyss. Part 5. The heat of the moment. The chamber trembled around Victoria, the temporal Aegis pulsing like a living heart, its shimmering glow casting waves of light across the brass and crystal web that held it. The air crackled with energy, each tick of the vault above reverberating through her bones, as if time itself were unraveling. Elias's hand lingered on her arm, his grip firm yet warm, pulling her back from the edge of the glowing sphere. Her pulse raced not just from the danger, but from the unexpected heat of his touch, a spark that set her nerves alight in the midst of chaos. She shook him off, her cheeks flushing as she refocused on the Aegis, its unstable hum a reminder of the stakes. "We're not leaving," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm close to stabilizing it. If I can sync my gauntlet's frequency, we can stop this before it tears the hollow apart." Elias's eyes, sharp beneath his hat, studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You're stubborn as a mule, Victoria Grimshaw, but I'll be damned if it's not compelling." His lips curved into a half-smile, and for a moment the danger seemed to fade, replaced by a charged silence that hung between them. Gearhart's sensors whirred, breaking the spell. "Mistress, the Aegis's temporal field is destabilizing further. We have minutes before catastrophic failure." "Catastrophic failure," Elias groaned, running a hand through his dark hair. "Why is it always catastrophic with you two? Can't we just have a nice, quiet evening for once?" Victoria shot him a look, half amused, half exasperated. "Help or hush?" "Elias, I'm trying to save us all here." She adjusted her gauntlets, the leather warm against her skin, and leaned closer to the Aegis. Its light bathed her face, illuminating the smudges of soot and the determined set of her jaw. The device hummed, responding to her pulses, but each adjustment felt like threading a needle in a storm. Elias stepped beside her, closer now, his shoulder brushing hers as he peered at the sphere. The contact sent a shiver down her spine, unbidden and distracting. "You're too close," she muttered, though she didn't move away. "Am I?" he teased, his voice low, a velvet edge to it that made her heart skip. "Or are you just afraid you like it?" His breath was warm against her ear, and for a fleeting second, she imagined turning to him, closing the distance, letting the chaos of the moment consume them both. But the Aegis pulsed again, a sharp reminder of their peril, and she forced herself to focus. "Keep your charm to yourself." "Hayes," she said, her tone sharp but betraying a hint of a smile. "I need to concentrate," he chuckled, stepping back with a mock bow. "As you wish. My lady engineer. But don't say I didn't try to lighten the mood." Gearhart's frame shifted, his blue eyes flickering as he scanned the chamber. "Mistress, I detect movement above. Hostiles approaching likely Ironheart reinforcements." Victoria's heart sank. Eleanor's parting words echoed in her mind. The Aegis isn't meant for mortals to wield. Had she let them go only to trap them here? She pushed the thought aside, her fingers flying over her gauntlet's dials. The Aegis's hum began to stabilize, its pulses aligning with her device's rhythm. But the effort was draining. Sweat beaded on her brow, her arms trembling as she fought to hold the connection. Elias noticed, his playful demeanor fading. He knelt beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder, hesitant but steady. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said softly. "Let me help." She glanced at him, their eyes locking for a moment that felt longer than it should. His face was close, too close, his gaze unguarded, revealing a depth of concern she hadn't expected. Beneath the rogue's charm was something raw, something real, a man who'd lost as much as she had to this feud. The air between them felt charged, not just with the Aegis's energy, but with something unspoken. A pull that made her breath catch. "I don't need help," she said, but her voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "I need you to watch my back." He nodded, standing with a grace that belied the tension in his frame. Always. The chamber shook again, dust raining from the ceiling as footsteps echoed from the staircase above. Gearheart positioned himself at the entrance, his fists raised, ready to defend. Victoria's gauntlets sparked, the frequency finally locking with the aegis. The sphere's glow softened, its pulses slowing, but the effort left her dizzy, her vision swimming. She stumbled, and Elias caught her, his arms steady around her waist. "Easy," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent warmth flooding through her. His touch was gentle but firm, and for a moment she let herself lean into him. The world narrowing to the heat of his hands, the faint scent of leather and gun oil that clung to him. It was reckless, foolish even, but in that fleeting second, the weight of the curse, the city, the feud, it all fell away. Then the footsteps grew louder, and reality snapped back. Ironheart guards burst into the chamber, 6 of them, clad in steam-powered armor, their rifles gleaming with etheric charge. Gearheart roared, charging the first, while Elias fired his pistol, each shot precise but barely denting their armor. Victoria pulled free from his grasp, her gauntlets sparking as she joined the fight, or blasting steam to disorient the guards. "Stay with the aegis," Elias shouted, ducking a rifle's blast. "We'll hold them off." She nodded, turning back to the sphere, but her eyes lingered on him, his quick movements, the way he fought with a fire that matched her own. The chamber became a battlefield, steam and sparks filling the air as Gearheart tore through armor and Elias danced between blows. Victoria's fingers trembled as she fine-tuned her gauntlets, the aegis's hum now a steady pulse, but the guards were closing in, and time was slipping away. Then a new sound, a sharp, musical chime from the aegis. The sphere flared, and a wave of energy rippled outward, freezing the guards in their tracks. Victoria gasped, her gauntlets overheating as she held the connection. "It's working," she cried, but the effort was too much. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Elias hadn't caught her again. His arms a steady anchor. "You did it," he said, his voice rough with relief, his face inches from hers. The chamber was still, the guards immobilized, the aegis's glow soft and stable. For a moment, they were alone in the chaos, their breaths mingling. The heat of their closeness, a quiet rebellion against the cold machinery around them. But the chime grew louder, and Gearhart's warning cut through the haze. "Mistress, the aegis is recalibrating. It requires a final command, or it will reset, undoing our progress." Victoria pulled back, her heart pounding, torn between the man beside her and the mission ahead. The aegis was their key to breaking the curse, but its power was a double-edged blade. And the approaching footsteps warned that Eleanor's forces weren't done yet. She met Elias's gaze, a silent question passing between them. Could they trust each other to see this through? "Ready for the next fight?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fire in her veins. "With you," he replied, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "Always." Part 6. The Shattered Pendulum. The chamber glowed softly, the temporal aegis humming like a calmed beast, its shimmering surface now steady under Victoria's careful calibration. The frozen Ironheart guards stood like statues, their etheric rifles still aimed but lifeless, caught in the relic's temporal pulse. Victoria's breath was ragged, her gauntlets warm against her wrists. their pistons hissing faintly as she steadied herself. Elias's arm lingered near her, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of steam and steel, his mischievous grin fading into something softer, more resolute. Gearhart's blue eyes scanned the staircase above, his sensors alert for any sign of more intruders. The air was thick with the scent of molten metal and anticipation, but for a fleeting moment, victory seemed within reach. "Final command," Victoria muttered, her focus locked on the Aegis. "Gearheart, what does it need?" "A sequence A mechanism." Her voice was steady, but her heart raced, the weight of the curse and Elias's nearness pressing against her resolve. The automaton's frame whirred, his voice a low rumble. "The Aegis requires a synchronization key, mistress, a device or signal attuned to its core frequency. Without it, the temporal field may destabilize again." Elias leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers, his voice low. "A key. Sounds like something the Ironhearts would keep close. Maybe too close." His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the chamber as if expecting another trap. Victoria nodded, her mind racing through schematics and possibilities. The Aegis was stable for now, but its power was a live wire, unpredictable and dangerous. She stepped toward it, her fingers tracing the crystal web that cradled the sphere, searching for a clue. The runes pulsed faintly, their glow hypnotic, whispering secrets she couldn't yet decipher. But before she could delve deeper, a sharp click echoed from the shadows, a sound like a clock striking midnight. Gearheart spun, his fists raised, intruder detected. He rumbled, his sensors locking onto a figure emerging from a hidden alcove in the chamber's wall. Victoria's heart sank as Lady Eleanor Ironheart stepped into the light, her silver hair glinting, her expression unreadable. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a young man, no older than Victoria, his features sharp and hauntingly familiar, his eyes green. Like her father's met hers, and the world tilted. "Edwin," Victoria whispered, her voice breaking. It couldn't be. Her brother had died years ago, a victim of the curse, his small body laid to rest in the Grimshaw crypt. Yet here he was, alive, his face older but unmistakable, clad in Ironheart colours, a cog-shaped pendant hanging at his throat. Elias's pistol was up in an instant, aimed at Eleanor. "What game is this?" he demanded, his voice hard. "You said the curse took their heirs." "Explain this." Eleanor's lips curled into a smile, cold and triumphant. "Oh, Elias, you always were too quick to trust your own eyes. The curse didn't kill Edwin Grimshaw. It claimed him. For us." Victoria's knees buckled, but she caught herself against the Aegis's frame, the shock cutting deeper than any blade. "You stole him." Her voice trembled, rage and grief colliding. "My brother, my family thought he was dead." "How could you?" Edwin, or the man who wore his face, stepped forward, his expression torn between sorrow and defiance. "Victoria, I didn't die. The Ironhearts took me, raised me, told me the truth about our family. The Grimshaws weren't victims. They tried to control the Aegis, to bend New Albion to their will. The curse was a safeguard, not a punishment." Her mind reeled, the pieces of her world shattering like broken gears. "A safeguard you call tearing our family apart. A safeguard, Edwin. You were my brother, I mourned you." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Gearheart shifted closer, his presence a silent shield, While Elias's gaze darted between her and Edwin, his pistol still trained on Eleanor. "The Aegis chose him," Eleanor said, her voice calm but laced with steel. "It needed a Grimshaw to balance its power, to keep it from consuming the city. Your grandfather's greed awakened it, and only a Grimshaw's blood could tame it. Edwin lives because we saved him for New Albion's sake." Lies. Victoria spat, but doubt crept in, cold and insidious. She turned to Edwin, searching his face for the boy she'd known, the one who'd chased her through the estate's gardens, laughing as they built tiny automatons from scraps. "Why didn't you come back? Why let us believe you were gone?" Edwin's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. "Because I saw what our family did. The Aegis wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon. Victoria. The Grimshaws wanted to control time itself, to dominate the city. I stayed to stop that. To protect you." The words were a dagger twisting in her chest. Her brother. An Ironheart. The curse. A lie. She glanced at Elias, hoping for clarity, but his face was a mask of conflict, his pistol wavering. "Elias," she said, her voice low. "Did you know about this?" He flinched, his jaw tightening. "Not about your brother, I swear it. I knew the Ironhearts had secrets, but this—" He shook his head, his eyes dark with guilt. "I left them because of their cruelty. Victoria. I didn't know they'd stoop to stealing children." Eleanor laughed, a sound that echoed through the chamber. "Cruelty. You abandoned us. Elias, you were my son, my heir, and you chose to run rather than face the truth. The Aegis demands sacrifice. It always has." The twist hit Victoria like a steam blast. Elias, Eleanor's son, the Clockmaker, her ally, was an Ironheart by birth. And now her brother stood with their enemy. The chamber seemed to close in, the Aegis's hum a mocking reminder of the truths unraveling around her. She gripped her gauntlets, their warmth grounding her as she fought to process the betrayal. "You're her son," she whispered, her eyes locked on Elias. "And you didn't tell me I didn't think it mattered," he said, his voice raw. "I'm not one of them anymore. I chose you. Victoria, I'm here, fighting for you." But the words felt hollow, overshadowed by Edwin's presence and Eleanor's cold certainty. The Aegis pulsed again, its glow flaring, and Gearhart's warning cut through the tension. "Mistress, the temporal field is shifting. The key is still required, or the Aegis will activate fully, disrupting time across New Albion." Victoria's gaze darted between Edwin, Elias, and Eleanor, her heart torn between rage and desperation. "The key," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos within. "Edwin, if you're really my brother, tell me where it is. Help me end this." Edwin hesitated, his hand drifting to the pendant at his throat. "It's me," he said quietly. "The Aegis is tied to my blood. To deactivate it, you'd have to destroy me." The chamber fell silent, the ticking of the Aegis deafening in the void. Victoria's breath caught, her world collapsing under the weight of the choice before her. Her brother, alive but lost to her, was the key to breaking the curse, and saving him might mean sacrificing everything else. Part 7. The Weight of Time's Choice. The temporal Aegis pulsed in its crystalline cradle, its glow casting eerie shadows across the chamber, each flicker a reminder of the ticking clock that held New Albion's fate. Victoria stood frozen, her brother's words echoing in her mind like a hammer striking an anvil. "It's me. The Aegis is tied to my blood." Edwin, her long-lost brother, stood before her, alive but bound to the Ironhearts, his green eyes, Grimshaw eyes pleading for understanding. Beside him, Lady Eleanor Ironheart watched with a predator's calm, her silver hair gleaming like a crown of thorns. Elias, revealed as her son, gripped his pistol tightly, his face a storm of guilt and defiance. Gearhart's sensors whirred softly, his massive frame poised between Victoria and the others, ready to act. The air was thick with steam and tension, the Aegis's relentless hum a heartbeat threatening to stop. "Destroy you," Victoria whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of the impossible choice. Her gauntlets, still warm from stabilizing the Aegis, felt heavy on her wrists, as if they carried the burden of her family's past. "Edwin, I can't. You're my brother." Edwin's expression softened, but his voice was resolute. "I'm not the boy you remember. Victoria, I've seen what the Aegis can do, what it did to our family. If you don't stop it, it'll consume everything. The curse isn't just about us, it's about New Albion." Eleanor stepped forward, her presence commanding despite the chaos. "He speaks the truth. Grimshaw. The Aegis was never meant to be controlled by one family. Your grandfather's ambition woke its power, and only a sacrifice can put it to rest. Edwin chose to serve, to protect this city. Will you?" Victoria's gaze snapped to her, fury rising like steam. "Serve, you stole him. You let us grieve. Let my father break, all to keep your precious relic." Her hands clenched, the gauntlets hissing as if echoing her rage. Elias cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the tension with an awkward edge. "Not to ruin the family drama. But, could we maybe not argue while the city's about to be erased from time? Just a thought." He flashed a strained grin, but his eyes were locked on Eleanor, his mother, the weight of their shared history palpable. Victoria shot him a look, half exasperated, half grateful for the levity. "You're not helpin'." "Elias." "Oh, I'm helpin'," he retorted, adjusting his hat with a flourish. "Keeping us all from strangling each other counts." Right, his humour was a thin veil over his tension. His pistol still aimed at Eleanor, though his hand trembled slightly. Gearhart's deep voice rumbled, grounding the moment. "Mistress, the Aegis's temporal field is fluctuating. A decision must be made within minutes, or the consequences will be irreversible." Victoria's heart pounded, torn between her brother's sacrifice and the city she'd sworn to save. She stepped closer to Edwin, searching his face for a trace of the boy who'd once been her shadow, her confidant. "There has to be another way," she said, her voice low but fierce. "I won't lose you again." Edwin reached for the cog-shaped pendant at his throat, his fingers trembling. "The Aegis needs a Grimshaw's blood to stabilize, but it doesn't have to be me." He glanced at Eleanor, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. "There's a failsafe, a secondary mechanism hidden in the Ironheart estate. It can reset the Aegis without a sacrifice, but they've kept it secret, even from me." Eleanor's calm facade cracked, her eyes narrowing. "You dare betray us?" "Edwin, after all we've done for you, done for me," he shot back, his voice rising. "You raised me to be a pawn, not a son. I'm choosing my family, my real family." He turned to Victoria, his expression raw. "The failsafe is in their vault, beneath the estate. But it's guarded, and the Ironhearts won't let you near it." Victoria's mind raced, her engineer's instincts kicking in. A failsafe, a chance to save Edwin, and break the curse without blood. But the Ironheart estate was a fortress, its defences legendary. She glanced at Elias, whose jaw was tight, his gaze fixed on his mother. The awkwardness of their tangled loyalties hung heavy. Brother, ally, enemy, all bound by a past neither could escape. "You knew about this failsafe?" she asked Elias, her tone sharp but searching. He winced, lowering his pistol slightly. "Not exactly. I knew the Ironhearts had secrets, but a failsafe. That's new." He met her eyes, his voice softening. "I'm with you, Victoria. Whatever it takes." Eleanor's laugh was sharp, cutting through the chamber. "You think you can storm my home, steal my secrets, and walk away? The fail-safe is a myth, a desperate hope. The Aegis demands payment, and it always will." Before Victoria could respond, the chamber shook violently, the Aegis flaring with a blinding light. The frozen guards shuddered, their armor creaking as the temporal field wavered, threatening to release them. Gearheart stepped forward, his frame blocking the nearest guard. "Mistress, we must move. The field is collapsing." Victoria made her choice. "We're going to the Ironheart estate," she said, her voice steel. "Edwin, you're coming with us. I'm not leaving you here." Edwin hesitated, then nodded, stepping away from Eleanor. The matriarch's face twisted with fury, but she made no move to stop him. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice low and venomous. "The Aegis will claim what's owed, one way or another." Elias grabbed Victoria's arm, pulling her toward the staircase. "Time to go, before my dear mother decides to get creative with her sentries." As they ran, Gearheart leading the way, Victoria glanced at Edwin, her heart aching. He was her brother, yet a stranger, caught between two families at war. Elias, too, was a paradox, her ally, yet an Ironheart by blood, his loyalty a question mark. The staircase spiraled upward, the ticking of the Aegis fading, but never silent. A reminder of the choice looming ahead. They emerged into the hollow, the air heavy with coal dust and the distant hum of New Albion. The city lay waiting, its spires glinting under the moon, but danger was close. Shadows moved in the tunnels, the clank of mechanical footsteps echoing. Elias flashed a grin, despite the chaos. "So, just to clarify, we're breaking into the most fortified estate in the city with a half-baked plan and a family reunion gone wrong. Sounds like a Tuesday." Victoria couldn't help but laugh, the sound shaky but real. "You're impossible, Hayes, and you're stuck with me," he replied, his eyes warm despite the danger. The moment passed, but it lingered. A spark of connection in the dark, with Edwin at her side and Gearheart's strength behind her. Victoria faced the path ahead, the Ironheart estate looming like a storm on the horizon. The failsafe was their hope, but the truth about her family, her brother, and the man beside her was a puzzle she wasn't sure she could solve. Part 8. The Dawn of a New Albion. The hollow's shadowed tunnels gave way to the open streets of New Albion, where the city's spires pierced the night sky, their brass tips glinting under a crescent moon. Victoria led the way, her boots pounding the cobblestones, with Edwin at her side, his face a mix of determination and uncertainty. Elias followed, his pistol at the ready, his quick glances betraying both wariness and a flicker of hope. Gearheart's heavy steps echoed behind them, a steady rhythm against the distant clank of approaching Ironheart sentries. The air was thick with coal smoke and anticipation. The Ironheart estate looming ahead like a fortress of secrets. Victoria's heart raced, not just from the danger but from the weight of her brother's return and the faint promise of the fail-safe, a chance to end the curse without losing him again. The estate's gates towered above, wrought iron twisted into intricate gears that seemed to mock their approach. "This is it," Victoria said, her voice low but resolute. "The fail-safe's inside. We get in, find it, and end this feud for good." Edwin nodded, his hand brushing the cog-shaped pendant at his throat. "It's in the vault, beneath the main hall, but Eleanor won't let us walk in without a fight." Elias snorted, adjusting his hat with a wry grin. "My mother's never been one for hospitality. Good thing I know a back way in perks of being the family disappointment." Victoria raised an eyebrow, a spark of amusement cutting through her tension. Led on, then, "Disappointment. Let's not keep the lady waiting." They slipped through a hidden service entrance, Elias guiding them past steam vents and whirring machinery. The estate was a marvel of engineering, its halls lined with polished pipes and ticking clocks, but the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves carried the grudge of centuries. Gearhart's sensors scanned for threats, his blue eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The group moved silently, the weight of their shared history, Grimshaw, Ironheart brother, traitor binding them as much as it divided them. The vault lay beneath a grand staircase, its door a massive slab of steel etched with runes that matched the temporal aegis. Victoria's gauntlets hummed as she examined the lock, her engineer's mind piecing together its mechanism. "It's a frequency lock," she murmured. "Like the aegis. I can bypass it, but it'll take time. Time we don't have," Elias warned, his eyes on the corridor. The clank of sentries grew louder, their mechanical steps echoing like a death knell. Edwin stepped forward, his voice steady. "I can help. The Ironhearts taught me their codes. Let me try." He knelt beside her, his fingers deftly adjusting a series of dials on the vault door. Victoria watched, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and pain. This was her brother, yet a stranger shaped by their enemies. The lock clicked, and the door groaned open, revealing a chamber lit by a soft, pulsing glow. At its center stood a console, its surface covered in levers and dials, connected to a crystal orb that hummed with the same energy as the aegis. "The failsafe," Edwin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It can reset the aegis, sever the curse without a sacrifice, before they could move." The chamber filled with light, and Lady Eleanor Ironheart stepped from the shadows, flanked by a dozen sentries. Her eyes burned with a mix of fury and sorrow, her silver hair gleaming like a beacon. "You think you can undo centuries of balance," she said, her voice cold. "The aegis protects New Albion. Without it, the city falls." Victoria stood tall, her gauntlets sparking. "It's not protection, it's a cage. The curse has torn both our families apart. Let's end it, together." Eleanor's gaze flickered to Edwin, then Elias, and for a moment her composure wavered. "You've both betrayed me," she said softly. "My son, my ward, yet here you stand, with a Grimshaw." Elias stepped forward, his voice raw. "I left because I saw what this feud did to us. Mother, it's not about winning. It's about building something better. Help us." The sentries raised their blades, but Eleanor held up a hand, her eyes locked on Victoria. "Why should I trust a Grimshaw?" "Because I'm not my grandfather," Victoria said, her voice steady but earnest. "I don't want power. I want a future for my family. For yours. For this city. The Aegis can be a tool, not a weapon. Let's share it. Rebuild what we've lost. The chamber fell silent, the hum of the failsafe the only sound. Eleanor's face softened, the weight of years evident in her eyes. You're like your mother, she said finally. She believed in bridges, not walls. I envied her for it. Victoria's breath caught, memories of her mother's words. Sincerity frees you echoing in her mind. Then honor her, she said. Help us. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded, a single decisive gesture. Stand down, she ordered the sentries. Turning to Edwin, she added, show them. Edwin and Victoria worked together, their hands moving in sync over the console, adjusting dials to match the Aegis's frequency. Elias stood guard, his pistol ready but his eyes on his mother, a flicker of hope in his expression. Gearheart's sensors monitored the orb, his voice calm. The failsafe is aligning. The curse's bond is weakening. The orb flared, a wave of energy rippling through the chamber, and Victoria felt a shift, like a weight lifting from her soul. The curse, a shadow over her family for generations, dissolved, its power redirected into the failsafe. The air cleared, the hum softening to a gentle pulse. It was done. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice quiet. The Aegis is yours to share, Grimshaw, but know this trust is earned, not given. Victoria met her gaze, a spark of understanding passing between them. Then let's earn it together. Weeks later, New Albion glowed with a new light. The Grimshaw and Ironheart estates opened their workshops, sharing blueprints and resources. Victoria's inventions, airships, automatons, steam-driven looms transformed the city, their designs bearing both families' marks. Edwin, no longer a pawn, worked beside her, his laughter a reminder of the boy she'd lost and found. Elias, ever the rogue, stayed close, his teasing smiles a constant challenge and comfort. One evening, Victoria stood on the Grimshaw estate's balcony, the city sprawling below, its spires alight with gas lamps and hope. Gearheart stood beside her, his blue eyes reflecting the glow. Mistress, he rumbled, the city thrives. Your mother's words were true. She smiled, touching the small box her mother had left her, its inscription, sincerity frees you, etched in her heart. Elias joined her, leaning against the railing, his shoulder brushing hers. Not bad for a stubborn engineer, he said, his voice warm. Not bad for a disgraced Ironheart. She teased back, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared triumph. Below, New Albion hummed, no longer bound by curses, but lifted by dreams. The feud was over, the future theirs to forge. And as the stars emerged, Victoria knew they'd built more than machines. They'd built a legacy of courage, trust, and a city reborn.